whatever information is going to be given unto us. We pray that your Holy Spirit come and be with us. Help us, Lord Father, understand, Lord Father, and also specify those key areas where we need help, Lord Father, and be helped. Heavenly Father, we ask from you, and we know it's only you that can guarantee us whatever aid that we need. Help us and take us through. In your name of prayed. Amen. In your name of prayed.
Okay. Thank you very much, Cassie, for leading us through the word of prayer. And this morning, we have Professor William Kisaalita, a university professor and UGA Athletic Association Distinguished Professor in Engineering. And he's a triple AS fellow and a visiting scholar at Uganda Christian University. He has a PhD in chemical engineering, that is the University of Columbia, has a BS in mechanical engineering, that is Makerere University, Kampala, Uganda. And I believe through his expertise and knowledge, we shall be able to learn a lot from him. And I request all scholars to be noting down their questions so that after he has spoken, we shall be able to pose our questions to him and also have an interaction on how we can better our writing skills, research skills, and also facing the new challenges that come aboard, especially with our theme being relevant. Thank you very much. Welcome, Dr. Kisaalita.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to repeat. I'm sorry I was muted, but I didn't realize that. I just want to thank Bernard again for the wonderful introduction. I'm going to use a PowerPoint for my presentation, but please let's make it conversation. Feel free to stop and interrupt. So let me share my screen and we get started from there. I hope this is visible. If you can't see it, I think let us know. And I hope I'm projecting loud enough so that I am easily heard. So
The screen is not being shared.
the screen is not being shared. How did that? That's right. Uh, show. So I don't see the share screen. Okay. And then okay. Well, apologies again for the start where the screen was not showing. So I've been made to understand that the theme this year is Be Relevant. So I picked up one of the lectures that I use in my school. I teach a graduate course, or beginning graduate students, in which one of the topics is mentoring. So in this, I'm looking to groom graduate students to mentor undergraduate students. And usually I make the case for why this is good. And part of the case is to argue why it's a good thing for undergraduate students to consider undergraduate research experiences. This is particularly topical now because with the new administration here at UCU, there is the talk of making the university research-led. What does that mean? That we increase the number of faculty who are engaged in serious research, and with that should come a number of undergraduate students that are engaged in serious research. And so the argument that I'm going to go through, is going to be an argument that my own institution has gone through some years back. I served as the associate director of the honors program there, with the responsibility of taking research out of honors and into the rest of the university. So I have a little bit of experience in this. And as I will show, that this is a highly coveted or highly valued thing of pride for my home institution, that I hope if it picks up here, it will be a point of pride for this institution. Already from, Miss Palm, I've had a number of great things that are happening with the student teams winning awards and what have you. The research angle of it is slightly different from competitions, but somehow from a pedagogical standpoint or teaching point standpoint, they're kind of related, as you will see. So let me jump into this. I structured this in 7 things, and I call them 7 things worth knowing. And at the end of it, I'm going to say, to do these things or to operationalize these things, whether from a student perspective or a leadership perspective, makes you relevant not only here, but globally. Okay. Bernard gave a good introduction, but I thought he probably won't give one. So I prepared this, what I call a brief bio. So you get to know me a little bit better. Some of the things that are in here, he's already said. But what he hasn't said is that I'm very Ugandan and very Mukononian. Is that what we say? Yes. Very Mukononian, in the sense that I went to Bishop School, Secondary School Mukono for my IS4. And from there I went to King's College, and I did BS, MS, and PhD in chemical engineering. And I'm a distinguished research professor at the University of Georgia, which is already said. But I have a few additional things that characterize who I am. The first, that I have these 2 research interests. One is in the area of biomedical engineering, and the other in development engineering. But medical engineering is very relevant to the American research industry space. The particular work I'm doing here is related to drug discovery before the drugs go into the clinical trials. We developed systems to make it cheaper, because discovering a drug in the United States is very expensive, or everywhere. It takes 14 years, used to take 14 years, and $1 billion before the drug hits the market. So there has been an interest in lowering that time and cost. And so some of my work has been related to this. Another angle of that is that I look at what is called usability studies of biomedical devices, or I create devices or devices. Right now, we are focusing on diagnostic devices at the point of care. Actually, these are kind of getting close to what I do in development engineering, in that they are relevant here. I'm working with Makerere University to develop a diagnostic low-cost point-of-care device that will allow the diagnosis of TB. As you know, this is a challenge because it takes a long time and it has to be in a lab. We would like to be able to walk to a community, wherever they are, and identify people who have TB so that now the intervention can start. So that's a thing that's relevant here now. Development engineering is essentially developing devices or products or services to increase people's income, particularly in the developing world. I've worked in about 5 countries in Africa where I've had projects, including Morocco, Tanzania, Burkina Faso, and mainly Uganda. Most of the work I've done here. So those are my interests, and it's actually development engineering that brings me to this campus, as I'll show a little bit in a second part that I'll touch on very briefly, is that I'm trying to develop here a sustainable development center, and honors students, I hope, are going to be a very good fixture of this center. Second, I consider myself a social entrepreneur, and you're probably already hearing that in what I've just said. I'm one author of 2 books and, working on a third. And I'm also an amateur photographer. And I want to emphasize amateur, to paint to you how bad I am, to let you know how bad I am at my photography, but I'm a student, so I keep learning. And last, I have an interest in African art, painting and sculpture. I collect, particularly low cost, and when I frame them, they kind of become very expensive in my house. So I have an eye, I feel like, for good art. And so those are a little bit of my bio. So I'm gonna get into this segue into the main 7 themes, but I thought I'll do a tongue-in-cheek thing here. In Uganda, one of the things that strikes somebody who hasn't been here for a long time is this requirement for evidence. If I go in an office and I say, okay, I'm a professor from UCU, they say, where is the evidence? They say, bring a letter signed by your head of department with a stamp. It strikes you so hard because it's like the feeling you have is that you are being declared a liar before you caught into lie. If I tell you I'm a UCU professor, why should I lie? But this is the culture, and you get used to it. So I figured, not to be a liar for what I've just said, I'll provide 2 pieces of evidence. I hope you recognize the background in this picture. I want to see when do you think this was taken? Sorry? It looks right old. Give me a year.
1960.
Bernard, you are cheating.
No, I'm not cheating. I'm just predicting.
You're just looking at my age
and then comparing
and figuring where I was. Yeah. I think it was taken around 1960, 70 or 60 something. Yeah, so you are right. And as you can see, I was, I think, maybe senior 3 or so. And with my friends, this used to be a great place for us. It was a theological college. We used to watch TV on Friday in one of the rooms in this building. We came to church in a chapel. There is a chapel on the side of the building. So this is where we used to come. We had a Christian Union group, and we had a professor, a teacher at Mukono, who was helping with this Christian Union, Mr. Bambry. Mr. Bambry was trying to teach us music, although we were not schooled in music. So it's a lovely place. You can see the compound is still as clean as it was then. So that's my evidence to say I'm not lying about being here many years ago. So if you want to ask me for a letter with a stamp, this is it. The second piece of evidence is my authorship. This is something that's been very aspirational for me from the get-go, even from here when I was here. I always wanted to become an author. And being an author is at least in American context, means that you're writing for general audience. I've written a textbook in my other field, and this is a book that I wrote that is very supposed to be general, but the publisher published it as a textbook. But I've won the battle with that, so that the next soft cover book that is coming is going to be priced as a general audience book at about $30. This one is priced at $100. And it's been a big problem for me because I wrote this book to be used by people or students who want to take ideas and commercialize them, ideas that are relevant to development. You can see what the subtitle says: empowering the poor through sustainable technology-based solutions. This is really what brings me here. And so in a short while, we will have a version that is about $30. And I think a book at $30 is affordable in a developing world, not $100. Even in the US, general audiences are not going to buy a book at $100. But students, we may force them to buy it at $100 if you make it a class textbook. They don't want to afford it, but their parents afford it. And so the publishers know that, and this is the advantage they take. So this is my second piece of evidence. I think with the two evidences, you perhaps you're gonna declare me a truth teller, and everything from here on will be good. So I want to get into the meat of my presentation today. And as I said, I structured it in 10 pieces, but some of those have different sub pieces. And as I say, it was originally designed on mentoring, but I've just oriented it to persuade you that if you are a second year or a third year, it will be a good thing for you to seek an opportunity where you do undergrad research while you are here for the benefit you're gonna get out of it. And I'll show what those benefits are, but not only you, other people also get benefits. So normally, when I started this, I ask, this question, and I ask this of my freshman students, or even my grad students, that what would be your answer if you were a freshman? This is in your first semester. Freshman means first year at UCU, and you are asked, what is research and who does it? Let me hear from the audience here. I don't know if they are able to speak back, those who they're muted, right? Or maybe it might be crazy just asking everybody. So let's maybe focus on the audience here. What do you think?
I think we can focus on both.
On both, okay? Well, let's hear from online. Let's hear maybe a couple of answers. If you are a senior or fourth year, go back to when you are a first year or freshman. And in your first semester here, you still green-eyed, and this is a question that's come to you. Let's make it even better. Let's say you were a law student, not engineering or agriculture. Or is it going to come in the chat?
get something.
Okay, that's good. If you don't hear anybody, go ahead.
Yes.
Hello.
Oh, there is somebody coming out. Yeah. Yes, please.
My name is Jerry Chisache,
Yes.
and personally, I think research is when you go and find out more about something in detail.
Yes.
And who does it? Me, the person who wants to know about that something.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I
good.
think.
When you wanna, the key thing you've just said is that when you wanna find more about details, let me put a scenario.
Yes.
Let's say, do you know Lupita Nyong'o? Lupita Nyong'o, the Kenyan actress who did, let's say, the Queen of Katwe, a movie that was shot here in Uganda. This is a question for Kisachi. She's muted. No, she's muted. Okay, this was the follow-up. If Lupita Nyong'o wanted to know more about the woman was being featured in Queen of Katwe, and she came to Katwe to see what Katwe is set up like, and looks for a young woman who looked like that. Is she doing research?
I believe she's doing research because she's finding more information about the lady.
Yes.
Yes, I believe she's doing research.
Okay. Let's hear from somebody else who might have a different answer.
There are some answers in the chat,
Okay, can you read?
and this is Annette Sanyu Najemba. She says, according to her, she would think of research being the act of finding out why something exists.
Yeah.
Then Miriam Litanyi Pakroth says research is looking for already available information, and it is done by people who want to solve a problem or bring a difference in the world.
Yeah. I think let's stop there for those three. I think that's very good. Actually, you guys are doing a lot better than my American students in that there is this stereotype where research is considered science. You know, that somebody who does it wears these goggles and a white coat, and that's what research is. Whereas when you look broadly, you are all right. It's somebody who is inquisitive, wants to inquire, has curiosity, and in the process may actually generate new knowledge. So there is no restriction to major. You can't be an English major, you can perform research. You can't be an art major, visual art major, and you research people like Da Vinci or Michelangelo that have gone before us, but they were doing something where you can create a question that engenders inquiry. So it's broader. Now, in engineering, well, I'm not going to speak engineering, but generally in science, technology, science, technology, engineering, and math, we can define research that discipline specific. And therefore, when people broadly want to define what research is, they struggle with this. But the moment you put a discipline brackets on each of these questions, it becomes very easy. For example, I talked about Lupita Nyong'o and within in a harsh space where you've got actors and actresses, they have a particular type of research they do. You can go and look at writers. You know, there are famous writers that have written, you know, fantastic books. You know, Stephen King, or I don't know if some of these you've read yourselves, but they do research in support of the writing they're going to do. And that's considered research. Therefore, whenever we want to ask you this question, I think the best way to ask the question, provide an answer, is to provide a discipline envelope, so to speak. Okay, I'm going to move on to my next number 2. So that was the first thing, one of the 7 things that are worthy knowing. I've already said that, you know, I think it's a great thing to create undergraduate research opportunities. Currently here, there is hardly any. And I think this is something we want to change. Perhaps this is something that the honors program should take a lead, because at other institutions where I come from, the honors program has always taken the lead. And once very successful, then the whole process or the whole practice spread to the overall university. So the question, why create these programs, is a very good question to answer. And I spent quite a number of subsections answering it. 2A, what is in it for undergraduate students? You know, there is a lot in it for undergraduate students. And this has been proven by scholarship, by people who've researched these. The first one is that when you take a group of students who are doing undergrad research and those who are not, essentially you're going to see higher GPAs for those who are doing so, even when you take care of their incoming rating, so to speak. And in America, we look at SAT. Students who are very good have higher SATs coming in. Even when you correct, students who are doing research tend to have higher GPAs. The fellow who wrote this paper, Feckheimer, is a colleague of mine. You know, analyzed the tons of data on this. So it's true. And as a teacher, it's easy for me to understand why. You know, I'll take, say, for example, undergrads in my own lab. I run a lab at University of Georgia, and I maybe at any one time I have 3 undergraduates in the lab. And the thing that you find is that these students have access to me, a professor, readily. That is to say, as I come through the lab, they can stop me and say, Professor, I have this issue on this particular concept that I heard about in my psychology class or in my engineering class. What do you think? So they get some kind of this side teaching that is constantly present. And because of this, they get a little bit of better mileage out of their interaction with their mentor. When I say mentor, I mean I'm their supervisor. Number 2, second part on this 2A is participating in creating new knowledge is very exciting. You know, normally when you go into a class, for example, I'll speak a lot of engineering because that's where I am from. Let's say you go to a class in dynamics or statics or any of those engineering science classes. The knowledge there was created a long time ago, and you just learn it, regurgitate it, or put it in practice. But when you are doing research, you are at the front line of creating new knowledge. And when you create this new knowledge, increases your engagement, your understanding, confidence, and awareness. So if you are in a meeting, let's say with the professors and what have you, if you have high confidence, you have no hesitance to contributing to conversation. And that creates a little bit of what you call a stronger connectivity with these people. I want to move this thing, but I don't know if I can move it so that I can see. No, I can't. Okay. The third argument is this early mentor-mentee relationship. Why is this important? I'll give an example from my world, from my school. You know, one of the students that was in my lab was a second year, and we got to know each other very well. And at the end of that second year, once a letter of reference uh, for an internship or summer job. Typically, you can go to your professor in chemistry or what have you to write you a letter, but guess what? They don't know you well. But for me, I know you well to the extent that I can represent you very well. Because why do I know you well? We've cried together when an experiment failed. We've celebrated together when experiment has succeeded. We've gone out to have lunch together. You perhaps have been at my house for dinner or something. So there is this way I can represent you to people who are going to see you. And some of you may know, may not know this, that a good letter of reference is a letter. So when the other person reads it, they have that feeling that I've met this girl before, or I met this boy before. I know this boy just through the writing. And somebody where you just had a class and you got an A, and in my world, the classes could be very large. No professor is gonna write a letter like that. They're gonna say, oh, smart kid, got an A in my class, give him the fellowship. Well, nobody gives a fellowship with that kind of letter. They want a letter from somebody like me who's going to talk about nuances of who you are so that I paint a realistic character or picture of you. The last item here, I don't see it very well on my screen. I don't know if the others see it because I've got this bar that is in the way. It's this, it may not be relevant here because in Uganda and developing countries, you come in and you get admitted into a major. In the US, you are not. You start your first year as a general student and then you decide your major. This is one way students try to find out if indeed they're in the right major. And I think the history we have with an American setting is that students will change their major before they graduate 5 times. They might come out starting in economics, then they go into public health, they don't like it. They leave public health, they come to engineering, they don't like it. They go to business and they graduate. And sometimes it takes longer to graduate. But what is important is that they've graduated in the right, or they've made the decision very early. So having a hands-on will help that. So that's my part 2A. I'm still on that second thing you ought to know. And I'm gonna, let me see if this thing is gonna move. I'm going to continue to answer it, that it's not only students that benefit from this, faculty do. And I'll go very quickly through this because it may not be relevant for you. In other words, for faculty to spend the time to do it, some of them don't do it because they love students. They do it because for what they get out of it. And this is the risk. Some are interested in mentoring future mentors because in my setup, I get my graduate students to mentor undergraduates. They're creating future faculty. They're creating people who are going to replace them when they retire. There are certain grants that are specific for undergraduates. We call them research experience for undergraduates. These bring money to you. I'm going to write one that through which I'll bring students here, American students here, to work with the local students. And And therefore, my experience doing this is very helpful in that I'll be believed when I say, I want this money so that I can take these students to have an experience in Africa. But at the same time, I'll have my African students have an experience with American students. And there is this thing that what I call a two-way mentor-mentee relationship. I talked earlier about a student taking advantage of the fact they know you and write a good letter for them. But the professor also sometimes requires a letter of reference. I'll give an example. When I have a number of teaching awards because I'm a passionate teacher. And when you're nominated with one of these awards, the people who are going to judge it sometimes say, we want to hear from what your students think of you. Guess who I asked to write a letter for me? A student who I've known very well, and hopefully a student that I think knows me very well. I have examples of wonderful, wonderful students who write these good letters for me. Now, if I didn't engage in their mentoring or having them in my lab, perhaps I wouldn't have anybody who writes a good letter for me. And the last item here is that, when we run a lab, sometimes we have these risky ideas, something that's going to bomb once you start it. You don't want to get your master's, PhD student to do this because they may spend time and then they can't get anything out of it. But an undergraduate is ideal for this. I have a case that is very interesting. I had this undergraduate come to my lab and we said, well, we had discussed something we said will never work. And no grad students want to spend time on it. Well, let's give it to this green-eyed student. Well, we do. Guess what? It works. And guess what? We even get a patent out of it. And guess what? This student becomes one of the inventors on that patent. So you can see, the benefit that accrues to me as a director of a lab by engaging into having these undergraduates in my lab. Okay, this is my 2C. Again, I'm still on those things, this is a scholarly work. This is to speak to, the way they structure how I do this is that when I have an undergraduate in my lab, I have a senior graduate student be the direct mentor. And then, of course, I'm overall director of the lab. Somebody has run an experiment on these graduate students. And I present here only 2 graphs, and they will speak volumes to this. You all may not be very familiar. You are familiar with the hypothesis testing and experimental design. So this guy, he published this in Science, and that may not mean anything to you, but it means volumes to us. Science is one of these highly coveted journals. Impact factors are very, very high. It's very, very difficult to get a paper in. However, this was published there, which means that it was very, very important. The results were very important. But the experiment was like this. They got graduate students who are mentoring or teaching to write hypotheses. And they had 2 arms. One set of grad students does research and teaching. The other does research only. And they get them to write hypotheses. And then they've got an independent panel that determines the testability of the hypothesis. Guess what? The student, the grads who are involved in teaching wrote better hypotheses. This does not surprise us because some of you who taught, has anybody taught here, taught others? Is there a teacher here? Or mentored others? So what was the surprising thing when you first did it? What were you most surprised with? Or what do you thank your professors for who taught you for many years?
One of the things that I appreciated in the first encounter was I was going into matters that I would take lightly, because basically for me, when I went for such sessions, I would imagine going in for totally academic work.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this exposed me to other wider experiences.
Let's hear from somebody else. Anybody here who has? No. What about from the audience? I guess they're too young to have been teach others.
Some have mentors.
Huh?
Some have mentors.
Have mentors. No, but I want you to be the mentor rather than being a mentee. Yeah. A peer-to-peer is a little bit different. I think I really want to have a little bit of distance. Yeah, because there is something that is very important. Students discover. I'll tell it if nobody from the audience will, that they first of all worry about being wrong. In other words, they're supposed to be in this at this higher level. What if they're wrong? They study hard to make sure what they're going to say is right. And most of the time, if it's something they studied long time, this is when they understand it. So that's the first thing. The second thing they find out is that to be able to manage the student, they got to do a lot of preparation, because they don't want to show up tomorrow and they're going to run an experiment or something and they run out of things to do in 30 minutes or 20 minutes. So they begin to appreciate what this they tell me, I know what you professors go through now. What they don't realize, of course, I have a lot of experience, I've done it many times. It's not like I'm doing it the first time every time I do it. But there is a heightened sense of understanding, inquiry that goes with the idea you're going to appear before others, and you're going to say something that may be wrong, and for most of us, it's embarrassing to say something that is wrong. And for most of us, people find it difficult to say, I don't know, which is a mistake. When you don't know, you should say you don't know, and you promise to find out. But even when you promise to find out, you go and find out. So this data does not surprise us. It's just captured very scholarly. The second part, whenever you write a hypothesis, you follow it up with an experimental design. They extended this in experimental design. How good the experimental design. Guess what happened? Again, our students that are engaged in teaching perform better. So you can see how this is good for you. Or even when you talk about peer-to-peer, peer-to-peer, you're beginning to that stage of mentoring / teaching. You begin to accrue these benefits. You as an individual in being a better person, if we can use that. Now, I'm going to skip this. This is a question I bring up if I'm in my graduate class and I'm asking these graduate students, what else have I not talked about? And they come up with all sorts of interesting things. Because I'll skip this and go to my third thing worthy of knowing. How are we doing in time? I just want to make sure we're probably almost an hour, right? Okay. And what do we do? Do we just keep going?
But we need to keep time for the interaction.
Okay. Well, let me do this. Before I go to this, let me stop here and see if there are comments or questions or disagreements. Let's hear from the audience, from what we've covered so far.
You can raise up your hand, or you can send a message in the chat, and then you will be attended to.
When we get into mentorship, oftentimes a mentor, let me say a faculty mentor, might be looked at as a person who has a lot of preparation to do, but at the end of the day, during the interaction, they actually find out that even the mentee has a lot of work they have to do, and in that course of interaction, there is a lot of learning that the faculty mentor gets to
Nah.
gets to have from the mentee.
Yeah.
So like you said earlier, it's a two-way in all
It was
aspects.
free.
So I feel like much as there's a lot to get,
Yes.
there's a lot to also learn from
To
the
give.
people that are being mentored.
Wonderful. That's so you are commenting on this idea that there is a good reason for a faculty to do it. They will learn, or they'll get something new, or they'll have a perspective. And for me, there is an added angle. You know, if you're as old as I am, you really don't understand freshmen or college students unless if you interact with them. And these things kind of generation, they change in time. But by constantly having this, you understand what is it that bothers them. Are their parents too overbearing? You know, in America, we've had what we call the what's the name you call these parents? Not the .com, but the there's a name for people who were born, I think, after Second World War. Baby boomers. The baby boomers have been very successful. They have this idea they are successful better than them. I think we have somebody talking. Not getting them there. Okay. Let's continue. So they can't be overbearing to the extent that they are robbing the students the independence. These are the kind of parents that accompany their kids to one interview, you know. This is when somebody is supposed to be independent and therefore do better. So you get to learn of these things. The other issue we have that we learn in these interactions are there are students, particularly those of foreign-born parents, who very much want their kids to go to medical school and not do anything else, or and the kid or the student may say, no, medical school is not for me. But my mom and dad cannot understand that. So you see that stress, you know. I remember a student very well who wanted to be a writer. And when I sit down with her, she says, I love to write. I told her, well, I love to write too. She says, well, would you mind looking at what I've written? I say, I'll be glad to. I look at what she writes. It's just golden. I tell her that the next day, and she just cries. She says, you're the first person to appreciate what I write. I can't show it even to my parents because I'm going to medical school, you know. And as a teacher, you need now to provide a perspective for them. But anyway, so I'm glad for that comment. Let's hear one more comment and then we move on.
Basically, mine is a question. As you explained, the mentor-mentee relationship, it is like a double-edged sword that cuts to the side of the mentor and the mentee. As a teacher, I'm a teacher by profession of fine art, and I love painting and sculpture. And I hope with time you'll see some of my artworks that I've done. Yeah. You'll find that sometimes, as teachers or as mentors, you'll find that it is sometimes hard to admit or to learn from our mentees, rather take it in bad faith that maybe they're wiseacring, becoming so, pretending to be knowing so much more than the mentor. So as a professional or somebody who has been in this field for a long time, how have you taken in learning from the mentee's side to you as a mentor?
Well, first of all, the first exercise is to create authenticity. That is to say, when we begin the interaction, I have to make sure that my mentee, you use the wiseacring, there is a word you used, is not engaged, is not going to engage in that, that there is always authenticity. And how do I do that? The social scientists have this trick, the 5-question trick. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. But if you tell me something, I can follow it up with a question. If you answer that question, I follow it up with another question, and so on and so forth. Experience is, by the time we get to the 5th, if you are not authentic, you've already broken down. I'll give an example. If a student comes in and says, "Oh, professor, my homework was eaten by my pet. This is why I haven't handed it in." The first question you ask, what type of pet is it? "Oh, it's a dog or a goat." Say, "Oh, wow, what's the goat's name?" And comes up with the name Joel. Okay, and then you say, "Well, when did you get it?" We got it in 2015. Well, what does it eat? This guy lives in an apartment. "But I thought you live in an apartment." So you begin to see people cannot pretend beyond 5 questions. The moment that happens once, this individual, if they can learn, they learn very quickly that I'm going to be authentic with this guy. If I just didn't do the homework, say, "Professor, I didn't do it." Or if there is something that I really don't know, I'm better off saying I don't know. And for me, this is one of the things I do when I'm selecting undergraduates. Again, I'm going for this authenticity. I give them papers to read as they're considering coming in my lab that I know they will not understand. I want to see next time they come to talk about it, whether they're going to admit they don't understand it, or they're going to go look at my website and try to pretend they understand it. And again, I use my 5 questions to very quickly show that they actually don't understand it, that they've been better off telling me up front what they don't understand. And the student I respect the most, the one who walks in, sits down, and the first thing, "Professor, I don't know what you mean by this. What's this PCR, qPCR, what is that?" That's always a telling thing. That's the student I want. There is authenticity behind what they've read. There is, in other words, that individual is going to actually teach me, and I'm going to teach them. So I'll show how I select. I've got a whole trick on how to find the best. But anyway, so I hope that speaks to your question, that as a mentor, you need to establish that, I call it playing, equal playing plane, that says it does not work to pretend. It's not a benefit to either you or me. And therefore, let's handle it in such a manner that is going to be beneficial to both of us. Okay, should I move on, or should we wait for another question or comment? Do you have one with that?
There is one. It is simple. Is there a soft copy of your book, sir?
The publisher refuses to give a soft copy because they want to make money. I wish I could give a soft, and I'm not allowed by contractual to distribute what I've written. So they sell e-copies. But if you can hold on, I'm going to get, the moment the low cost one come through, I think I'm going to make effort to see if I can distribute it here or make several copies available in the, well, you don't have a bookstore here, library.
Yeah, open one blank text.
Okay, we'll make some copies available here, maybe 5 or so, but so honors students can come and borrow them. It's a very, I don't have a copy with me, but it's something I'm very proud of, and it's I think listening to what some of the teams have done, this is something that could be of value. And a lot of experience are based on Uganda because I've worked quite a bit in Uganda. So the stories will be very familiar, but I think illuminating. Okay, let's move on to my third thing that would be worthy of knowing. So what I'm going to do here is to share what are available at my institution. So I share this to alert students to knowing these things are available. In the context, in the Ugandan context, these are things I would dream for the honors program or the institution to build in time. For example, spreading the research experience out of honors to the rest of the students. It's not going to be easy. It wasn't easy at my institution, but this will be a very, very good thing. Here I'm talking about how I did that. This is when, in 2011, I became the associate director, particularly to do this. So the point I want to make here is you know, because everybody gains, it's unfair to keep it only to honors student. It's like saying in a therapy that you have this, you know how they do clinical trials. There is the placebo and the experiment. And you find out the drug is very good for the experiment. You immediately stop the study and you make it available to the people taking the placebo. It's only fair to them. So I call it that fairness, that if something is good for the honors students, it should be good for the others. There are things that are not very relevant here, but I like to make them find a way they are relevant. At my institution, we have what called underrepresented, you know, African Americans, Hispanic. My school is a white school. It's a predominantly white school. And we create programs. I'm part of a group that we've won, now I don't know how many millions of dollars we've brought in. It run for over 10 years. We're probably in the 20 or more millions. With the idea, can we engage the underrepresented in research? Because this is how we can retain them. Here, there is no such a thing as a racial underrepresentation, but it's an economic underrepresentation. I think it's a good idea to say that perhaps if we can attract money and help the poorer students, I'm sure there are students who have difficulty, for example, making the tuition pay. Is there a way we can identify them and say, you know what, talent is everywhere. It's a question of opportunity. Can we bring opportunity to them to even the playing field? I think this is a good concept. For us, it works very well. You know, I have students that are African Americans that would have dropped out of school. I'll tell a story about one, you know, that I really cherish a lot. This young woman came to my institution, and when we had Katrina, there was the flooding somewhere, and schools were full of pollen, not pollen, fungus, stuff like that people who have allergies could not stay. So she came and she was dropping out of school. And I said, well, come to my lab, and through this we'll support you. And introduce her to research. She got better and better to the extent that when she graduated, she had a low GPA, but I helped her get into school, University of California, Davis. And now she's just been doing a postdoc in Israel. She's coming back to become faculty in a very high ranking school. So this is an example that, you know what? Talent is everywhere. Problem is opportunity. So once you know that, you look for people who may have talent but lack opportunity, and you bring opportunity to them. So this will be true in the context, in the Ugandan context. Okay, now there are, I don't know here if there are research courses, but again, this is something, if you're gonna spread this thing to the whole university, that will be very good. If you get, for example, let's take any kind of department. Let's take agriculture. Agriculture could have a course designated a research course. That is to say, for 3 credits for a semester, there are no classes for you to attend, but to have a mentor, and you're gonna accomplish something. At the end of it, you're gonna have a report, and you get credit. Because students sometimes worry, oh, if I do research, it might delay my graduation because I'd rather take a class instead. Well, we're getting them from the back by saying, there is a class, do research, you'll get credit, and the curriculum should make it part of the curriculum. Here, what I show, I show microbiology, engineering, and history at my institution. History, they have a research course. So this is something can be easily sold to faculty who make this curricula, especially if they embrace this idea of a research-led institution. What's the last one? This is the thing for us, people do all the time at my institution. For example, if you want to go to medical school at my institution is a second degree. You take a first degree and then you go to medical school. One of the requirements they want to look at is, have you done undergrad research? Have you done research before? So there are students in their second year say, I'll come to your lab. I don't need any payment or anything like that. I just want to get credit because I'm heading to medical school. I'm heading to law school. I'm heading to physical therapy school. These are professional schools that you need to go to. So here, I don't think this has a lot of relevancy. The relevance would be, for example, Miss Birungi here, if she's going to go to a university in Canada somewhere, the evaluation there will find it very interesting that you've done research before. You know, for students, you're probably listening to me, honors students, if you plan to go to US or Canada for graduate school, the evaluation at the other end takes into account if you've done research before. Why? Because we want you to know what you're getting into before you come here. I've had a number of administrative stints. I was a graduate coordinator for 4 years in engineering. That is to say, I was responsible for admitting students who are coming to grad school. So I've had a lot of experience with this. There is always a danger in bringing this student with a GPA of 4/4 who has never done research. They get in and it's a different animal. And I've got an example with that. I hired a student, 4.0, comes in the lab, but she's all thumbs. And that's a what? A colloquial or slang. Does anybody know what being all thumbs mean? Maybe it's an American colloquial, or being all thumbs. You know how short the thumbs are? That means all your fingers are short. What does that mean? You can't hold things, you break glass. Where are you? Thermometers are always falling on the floor. She hated research. And as a good mentor is for me to say, I want to go, her to go to where she should go. So it didn't last long. Now, if she had done research before, and I saw that on her resume, I would not worry. But I was young and not able to evaluate people who are coming in, and I made that mistake, and I don't make it again. So if you're listening to me, you can hear the benefit of doing this while you are here, whether you are paid or whether you are working more hours than support your other social agendas. There is this thing in part 3 we call service learning. This school, I'm partly here because the agriculture school has this great service that they go to the community, but they haven't tied it to a course. At my institution, we have courses that have an L. Somebody registers that course that they're going to do service in the community. Let's say this is something that, you see all the plastic in the drainages and what have you. I've always wondered, why doesn't anonymous group here organize and we go and pick up that plastic? That is service. And while we're doing it, we can organize it in such a manner that there is some learning, and there is always learning in doing so. When you walk past those things, at my institution, students do this quite a bit. They spring break, there are people who go do service for spring break. While others are in Florida. Florida is a hotspot for students, so this is, I think, my last component in number 3. I think let me go to number 4, and then we will maybe stop there and see if there are any comments. What undergraduates find most difficult is finding a mentor. At least if this is experience where I'm from. Here, of course, it hasn't, but it will be the same. That if I persuade you that you want to do this, you're going to find it hard to find a mentor. But I've got tricks on how to do this. I'll skip that. I'll skip that because it's not a problem here yet. But where I'm from, it can be a problem, and I help students do that. So let me go to 4. 5, excuse me. This is where I say how I select students. This is mainly for students to know if they want to succeed in getting in a lab, what is it that they need to do? So I give them some tips on how. For example, for me, the first inquiry comes by email, and I don't answer it because this is a screening process. A student who will not come back and ask, oh, professor, I sent you an email 2 weeks ago. Maybe you missed it. A student who doesn't remind me of that is not serious. But a student who really wants to, give me 2 weeks and they'll remind me again. So I purposely don't reply. Again, to have a screening effect. And then I arrange a first meeting. This is where I give them that paper that I said. So when they come back for the second meeting, if they're pretending, then they're really no good. And after that, I take them to the lab to visit with the people they're going to work with and the mentors that they're going to work with. So this way, I select the best, and I haven't been disappointed. The technique works very well. My undergrad mentees are everywhere. Stanford, they've gone places. So this works. I think maybe let's stop here and see if there are comments. And then I'll do 6 and 7 to wrap up.
Maybe before we get questions concerning the parts that you've added to the presentation, earlier on there came in a question. First, and she appreciates you for the information availing to us. and she's wondering how she can deal with people having rigid beliefs in cultures and faith as mentees.
Say that last part.
How can a mentor deal with people having rigid beliefs in cultures as mentees?
Yeah, it's a challenge. I have to share first the American setup. In the American setup, we don't mix uh, government or teaching and say religion. For example, I can't stand in front of a class and talk about my religious beliefs because by law, we're supposed to separate this. Of course, it's a challenge for me when I come here because I've got to now change because at a private institution like this, the two are intertwined. So the way in America it works is that people get to know a little bit about you and they choose you because of who you are. It is very interesting. Most of the students I would come with here would have strong religious beliefs because of the service nature of what I do. They felt called to come here. And so, where I am from, it's almost automatic. I don't have to say anything, but once we know each other, we can share our beliefs. But I can't stand in a general class and even something like a prayer before a meal. A prayer that we're supposed to offer. Let's say we're going to have a general meal and we want to say something which would be something to bless the food. It tends to be a little bit more encompassing so that if there is a Jewish individual in the group, if there is a Muslim individual in the group, if there is an atheist in the group, and if there is a Christian in the group, and Christian comes in all sorts of denominations, they'll all feel comfortable. So we all learn how to to bless the food in such a way that we're inclusive. That's the American politics. It's politics of some sort. When I first came here, I'll tell you, I wanted to have an experience with what students here eat. So I paid for tickets and I go to the dining room to just have that experience. What do students eat here? So for an American, lunch starts at 12. Here it starts a bit later. So I was the first to go there. So the people serving asked me to bless the food. Of course, my mind runs quickly to say, well, I've got to do the blessing I do in America. But then I realized, no. I'm in a Christian school. I can say whatever I want to say that I believe in. Of course, I modified my prayer. So I'm not answering the question directly. But what I say is that I call it social intelligence, that if you're socially intelligent, you can find a way you don't offend, but you also affirm the belief. So this takes a little bit of practice. So in other words, to answer, was it Kato? Judith. I feel I'm comfortable really working with anybody and everybody, no matter what their beliefs are, I'll take them. I can do that without offending them, but I still hold my beliefs that are strong for me. I don't have this thing that says that if you have this label, I won't have you. First, it's illegal in America to do that. Second, I think that I find it's a moral obligation on my part, and that's just my morality, that everybody is human, and therefore they may have these differences, but nobody doesn't deserve an opportunity. And unless if people are doing something illegal, If they're not doing something illegal, they deserve an opportunity. So I do everything to make sure I reach out to everybody. And guess what? This is how you change people. I'll give an example again. I came here to Uganda with a young woman who was not raised in church at all. But everybody in the group was very highly religious. So our first time here for them to find a church, and she's totally lost. Eventually she says, you know what? Maybe I was put here in the right place for some right reason. Everybody goes to church. I'm not. Where have I been? And she was sharing with me because I'm close to me about the issue. Tells me a little bit about her family. And guess what? She's a convert. What I mean by convert, when she goes back, she begins to embrace going to church. And of course, she's part of that community. She's a big shot now. She's one of the executives, I won't name the company, one of the big pharmaceutical companies in the US. And I'm in touch with her. She spends her vacation volunteering in the underserved communities as part of her portfolio on service within her within her church or her belief. So you see an opportunity there. If I made a decision that I think she has no idea about what church is, and I'm going to exclude her from being part of this, I would have lost the opportunity for the change that not only me, but all the other people in the group made to this young woman. And we cherish it. We all cherish it. So I hope that answers the question. And I tend to call it social intelligence. Be socially smart that you can provide these accommodations. Should we move on? Okay, I've got two last slides, 6 and 7, or two last themes. These are excuses, at least at my place, students give. I'm sure some of you listening to me, if I provided an opportunity now, which I am, I have opportunities, but perhaps you don't have enough time to talk about them. I think, Bernard, you've heard of the opportunities I have for honors students, the projects I'm doing here. We won't get into them because of time. But if I provide those opportunities, there are some of you who might have these excuses. The typical cost load at UCU is too high. I don't have time. Or I'll be ready for it when I'm about to graduate. If I'm a sophomore, I'm waiting. Or it's only a student for science. This doesn't affect you here because everybody who answered seems not to differentiate science and other majors. They are excuses. I've just shown the benefits students get before. There is no such a thing that you don't have enough time. People become more organized to be able to accommodate this. And number 7, this is a closure. This is my closure. I tend to call myself a storyteller. And a storyteller always has a beginning, a middle, and an end. My beginning was my little introduction. My middle was all those points 1 to 6. And my closure is point number 7. And number 7 is this recognition that we know in a scholarly way that undergraduate research is one of the what called high impact teaching research activity because it involves doing. There is this Chinese philosophers saying, I can't repeat exactly, it says, teach me and I forget, show me and I remember, engage me and I learn. This engages. there is no better way. It's not the only one, there are others, but there is no better way for people to learn something when they do this. And why it's important, because it's one of the way to start a change-making journey. And change-making, you know, is one of those things where the change makers have value. They recognize they have value, and their value is increased when they adopt a mindset. They are not just here for themselves; they are here for others. And where to close is say most likely you'd not get here by yourself, and therefore you have to pay it back. This is one way you could pay it back. I think that's the end, so we can have some open Q&A. And I have references, people are interested. I cited three Feckheimer, Feldon, and Bringon Hatcher. If somebody's interested, I can provide those references. So that's the end. I'm open for questions now.
Thank you very much, Professor William. We appreciate your knowledge and information that you told us today. And the scholars out there over the online platform, please feel free to ask any questions as in regards to what has been relayed to us. And then the physical audience, feel free to also engage.
Sorry, it's been very long.
Yes, we have a hand from Albert Ainebiona.
Yes, thank you so much, Professor, for the, I would personally want to call it a lesson, but it is more of an engagement, a mentoring session, and I think we've learned a lot. Personally, I'm a law student at Kampala campus, and I have to tell you that I've learned a lot, and I'll read more about the references. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So the other references. Okay, I will send them to you in full so you can distribute them. The last one is a book. It may not be available, but Feckheimer and Feldon et al. I have e-copies.
So Albert, we shall get the references and I will share them with you. Any other question?
Okay, thank you so much.
There is someone in the chat. She says, I personally have no questions, but this has been really a resourceful session. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Maybe as we wait for more questions, I'll make this point. The ex-Prime Minister, Cynthia Birungi, to give a vote of thanks to our dear professor who has enriched us this morning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bonner. Everyone know that the essence of all meetings is speech, gratitude. So on behalf of the entire Winners College, I'd like to appreciate Mrs. Evan for sparing time to come and share with us on such a public holiday. The one thing I believe that it's very important to teach someone or explain to someone the essence of something by presenting to us the essence of what is in the undergraduates when they carry out research. You're giving us more than how to do research. By that, you are laying a foundation for us to explore more, invest our time, so as to get what is needed for us in terms of research. There is that saying I have heard, I hear all the time, teach a man how to fish, other than having never fished. I believe you've just taught us how to fish. You may not have told us that by researching we need to go and review literature, but telling me that through research I'm going to become a highly knowledgeable student, and I have higher opportunities, only my CGPA quite higher than any other student not involved in research. I'm pushing to take you to the other steps of how and when, and you've basically detailed it all for us. So I want to highly appreciate that. Then you also highlighted something very important that in your the seven things worth knowing about research, or there's a lot you highlighted in your seven things, but there's something very critical I want to also applaud honors for you for. You spoke about mentorship, research, and I feel like the honors for leaders available that to us. Much as I believe you're also questioning them to open the opportunity for research in the entire university and not just limiting it to students with the high grades, because it is a worthwhile opportunity for everyone to engage in research. Then for scholars, like Professor William has explained to us, research is more like a door opener for, for opportunities in other countries here and beyond, because it gives you an upper hand. I think my first friend Samaris told me that by us, apparently my entire class, not my entire class, 90% of my class is in the honors community. So that gives us an opportunity to talk and look out for different opportunities and engage in honors community activities as a whole. So I want to very much appreciate your time and also appreciate Madam Pamela and Mr. Pamela for bringing such a resourceful guest or host for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cynthia, for those warm words to our guest speaker. And I know as a teacher, when you're not given feedback, you feel like you've done nothing. But this shows that, Professor, you've done a lot of work. And there's one more question here in the chat. And I'll have you read it to you. Thank you, sir, for the great information. You talked about what undergraduates find most difficult, and one of them was finding a research mentor. What would be the best criteria to find a research mentor?
Criteria. There is quite a bit that has been written about who makes a good mentor, but perhaps maybe this would be, I mean, it's a 30-minute talk, but I'll capture it in a brief answer this way. A good mentor, the thing you should find out about them in that initial engagement, that one, they're going to respect your opinions. That although they may have a lot of experience, but when you have an opinion, they do not dismiss it handily. It tells you they are open to learning from you, but it's not going to be a one-way street. So a mentor who exhibits that has chances of being a good mentor. The second thing, the mentor should be interested in you as an individual, as opposed to a worker, somebody who's going to come in the lab and work. And there are ways you can detect if they are interested in you by how curious they are about you. You know, for example, if you meet them and they may say, where are you from? They find out maybe you're of some corner of Uganda. So they should engage with that. They're trying to be interested in you. There are maybe other ways that exhibit that interest, but you should hear that from them. The second thing, the third thing I think to look out for would be that this mentor has others they've mentored, and there is a good track record. So at places, it's very easy. Here may be difficult, but where I am, we have all these rate your professor, students go and do things to rate us. They say all sorts of things about you. So students, very easy for them to go online and find out whether there is something wrong with this professor. So in absence of that, there is always chatter that goes around if somebody has some issue. So you want to listen to that. With those three things, I think if you do them right, you can, if you have a number of mentors to choose from, they can help you prioritize among the two, the three, or the four. But I can tell you, I have a whole lecture on that. It's about 30 minutes, so I'll just try to capture it the lecture has examples. So maybe another time.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor. Maybe my last question is, our students in the honors college do this program alongside their normal program, and you find that they come with queries to me that Mr. Wambale, I have challenges with balancing commitments. Like as an experienced scholar, what advice would you give to such scholars who feel like having challenges in balancing research alongside their normal programs?
Yeah. Oh, this is usually a challenge, but I start with a joke. My first head of department used to joke as an assistant professor who is starting, gonna go for tenure, have a family. It's a struggle to make things work. But what he used to say when we complained, he says, sleep faster. What he means by that, sleeping faster means that you get your 8 hours of sleep in 4 hours. You've slept faster, so you could get more done. But it's a metaphor for becoming very organized. And I usually have like two things to say to something like this. That one, budget your time and find out where you spend the time. You might find that actually you spend more time playing computer games than other things. If we never do a budget, we don't know where we're spending time or even money. When it comes to money, if you do a budget or you examine where you're spending your money, you might find that you're actually eating out more than you should, and you could reduce that. So this is the first step. Where am I spending my time? And where can I reduce so I open up more time? So that's the first thing. The second level is using a network. I'll take engineering student as an example. Engineering is one of the most demanding curricula at my institution in terms of number of hours, in terms of homework, and what have you. But students discover quickly when they work in a group, the reduced amount of time, for example, they spend doing homework. So if you have a group of 5 people and they're going to sit down and do homework, but what I mean by that, they're not copying what the top student does. They're each contributing and they're learning from each other. You could find that homework that's going to take you 4 hours, you end up doing it in less time. So using a group, working in a group has some help. And the third thing that helps with this sense of lack of time is um, to you know, not to sleep faster, like my head of department used to say, but to actually have good sleep. I know students, when they're very young, they believe when the times are hard, they're going to sleep for 2 hours. This is my experience, and not only my experience, very scholarly experience, that if you sleep for less, you are very inefficient when you are awake. So, in other words, I want to make the case, make sure if you are full sleeping 6 hours or 7 hours, you get it, because the waking hours are going to be more efficient. You know, as you get older, this becomes worse. For me, if I sleep very late, it fouls up the whole day. Overall, I'm more inefficient. Those are three things I've just mentioned. One is contrary to what people think, that if I sleep, we used to call it burning the candle. If I burn the candle, oh, I'm doing well. But guess what? You are not really very good. I personally see it. I review a lot of my students' papers and what have you. When I review them when I'm tired, or I look at them the next day and say, what was I thinking? I think it happens to everybody, but we just kind of lie to ourselves that, oh, man, I slept only for 2 hours. Guess what? You fouled another 8 hours. So that's my 3-point response to the question.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We do appreciate, and I will say something small on behalf of the Honors College office to you, our dear guest. Um, Thank you very much for your time, and we thank you for your willingness to be part of the Honors College, not only as a mentor, but as an advisor to this program. And I would like to encourage all the scholars out there to take this opportunity to engage with Professor William, because he has nice things in store for us when it comes to research. And as the Honors College, we are much committed to working with you. And we shall be giving mentors to the new students who just joined. And it's on this note that I request you to give us more time when we call upon you, especially when it comes to engaging with the mentors that will be assigned to the students, because the information we've gotten today is very important and relevant to the mentors themselves. And to the scholars, I want to re-echo honesty, as said by the professor. We should be honest people. If we don't know anything, let's admit that we don't know anything. Yes, one of the things we have been able to achieve at the Honors College is humility. When these students are presenting papers, you'll find their colleagues critiquing their work, saying, no, 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 you applied to us. This is not this, it is like this. And I thank God that they've taken this in good faith and have improved their writing and presentation skills. And I hope that through further engagement with you, they will be able to be perfect and better people to meet the global standards. So scholars out there, don't pretend. Be yourselves and say the truth. And we are committed to going beyond the Honors College. Any advice and techniques on how we can do it are highly welcomed, and we shall engage with you to see that we cover the whole university. Because the DVC academics, Dr. Chitayungwa, is much passionate about Honors College, going beyond Honors College and spreading to the entire university. Yes, and that's what I have to say. We have had our time well spent, and I will request that the online audience will turn on their cameras so that we can take a screenshot. Please organize your gadgets so that we can take a screenshot.
Professor, you can first stop sharing the screen.
Did I? Oh, I'm still sharing. I'm still sharing. Stop, excuse me. Yes.
Yes.
Please turn on your cameras so that we can take a screenshot that you're going to post on our social media pages so that the world out there can know that we had this wonderful speaker coming to us. Apofia Nisima, Gonza Dickens, Rebecca, Jerry, Monica, Leslie, Odidi, please turn on your cameras. Mecca, I think some are looking for better backgrounds. Good. Miriam Litany. Jerry, please turn on your camera.
Judith.
Senga Stephen. Vivian. Okay. Come again.
I wasn't gonna say.
Well, stand on their camera. Senga Stephen, Kugonza, we're waiting for you.
Or you have,
You have a profile picture, you can turn it on like Senga Stephen has done. Okay, there we go. A few people have failed to turn on their videos. Let me take the screenshot. Okay. Thank you very much for coming.
And on this
At this juncture, I want to invite the president who will give closing remarks and then also give us a closing prayer. Welcome, Mr. President.
Okay. Once again, I would like to thank the professor for the very inspiring and educational presentation he has given us. I believe we've all benefited, especially for our new scholars. It's been very informative, and I personally have learned a lot, and I believe everyone else has. I would love to thank Bernard as well and Madame Pamela, even with her absence. I believe that wherever she is, she has made this happen, and we're grateful. So let's humble ourselves for a word of prayer. But before that, those that have been able to join today's session, I believe you all registered there. Okay, we have all your names, and shortly you'll be able to receive your certificates as promised. So let's humble ourselves for a word of prayer. Father, Lord God, we want to thank you for today. We want to thank you for our speaker, our presenter, Professor, I want to thank you for each and everyone who has been able to join in today. We do not take it for granted that you have given us life, that even on such a public holiday, we've been able to be productive. When everyone else is enjoying and having fun, for us, we have been productive and learned something. So we don't take it for granted that you have given us opportunity to have Professor join us. From his experience, we believe that we as well have been mentored and have learned. We thank you and glorify your name. In the mighty name of Jesus, we pray and believe. Amen.
I just want to also thank the live audience. Thank you for, like in those comedy clubs or something like that, you have to have a live audience. Otherwise, it just feels so funny. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming.